All right. Well, thanks for having us down again. I kind of messed up a while ago. I was thinking our youngest son has never been here, but our oldest son, Johnny, is here with us. A lot of you probably see him at SWAT. He's the other guy that drives a forklift up there to get people in and out. So he lives down here in Lavernia, so glad to have him here with us tonight. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is Micarta. Does anybody know what Micarta is? 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Well, let me read the name of it first. It's a brand name for composites of linen, canvas, paper, fiberglass, carbon fiber, or other fabric in a thermosetting plastic. Wow, pretty deep. It was originally used in electrical and decorative applications. It was developed by George Westinghouse back in 1910. So a lot of you know what your TVs and stuff have circuit boards in them. That's actually a type of micarta. This is a type of micarta. It's called phenolic. It's very durable. I've used these for turning tools. It's very robust. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. So a couple things first. Safety. You've only got one pair of eyes, so wear safety glasses, face shield, especially if you're turning something that's out of round or questionable, especially mesquite that's got lots of cracks in it. These are impact resistant glasses, but I still wear a face shield at home. Tonight I may not wear that because I'm not turning anything really big. Dust, of course, we got some people in our club that's highly sensitive to mesquite. And if somebody comes into our club and starts turning mesquite, we got 2 people that just book. I mean, people cook with it, barbecue with it, stuff like that. Another thing is spalted wood is basically rotten wood. This is for new people. If you get some wood that's spalted, that's a fungus. And if you get that dust down in your lungs, you can actually get pneumonia and die. And the other thing that I normally say is when I'm out in the studio, I wear some kind of a smock so I can take it off and leave the dust outside so DB don't get excited. Because here I got this beautiful piece, you know, my buttons are popping off, and I go in the house and she sees chips falling on the floor. So wear something, take your shirt off or whatever. So, micarta. What I'm going to show you is how to take blue jeans and make micarta. Now, obviously, some of this is just going to be telling because there's some chemicals involved. It's not hazardous or anything like that, but you need to have a place to be able to wash up your stuff and things like that. So I use it. I might have to smack him yet. I use his studio because he's got in his shop, he's got a sink in there where I can clean the stuff up. And it's not that bad. Now, I get the cactus juice from Curtis Seaback. A lot of you have heard from Curtis, right? And he has the cactus juice, and that's what I stabilized my micarta with. And the phenolic is probably under high pressure, industrial type stuff, and it's a little bit solider than the micarta will be. Now, a couple things I'm going to hand out. I don't know, we're back here. Vincent's Wooden Wonders gave a couple door prizes here, sanding kits. So whoever gets those, there's a card in there. At least send him a thank you and say thanks for that. Another thing, Mike Hunter comes to SWAT each year. This is the #1 cutter that I use when I'm turning micarta. You can use a skew, you can use a gouge, but it needs to be extremely sharp. But I use this, and you can use it unhandled on pins and stuff like that. And that's what this handle's for if I wanted to use that. So that's a door prize from Mike Hunter that comes to SWAT. So, you know, you go to the mall, that's right at $100.
Good door prize.
Good door prize.
Where do I buy a ticket?
I don't know if you're having a raffle here tonight or not.
Yep.
Okay, so dig deep. That's a very nice thing. You know, people go to the mall, I think it's Old Navy and the Gap and places like that, and they'll spend $50, $60, maybe even up to $100 for a pair of blue jeans that's got holes in it. Well, how many of you got holy blue jeans at home that you just can't throw away yet? Yeah. Well, that's what I use. Now, I'll show you how I cut it up, and it's really quite simple. Guys, if you got a Dearly Love It, you know who that is, DB. This is her cutting mat. I don't know if you can see it. So this is a cutting mat, and you can do this in a couple different ways. I take the pair of blue jeans, and let me show you. So I take a pair of scissors. I don't know, is this showing up? Yeah. So you go right up the seam. Don't worry about trying to use a seam ripper like Yum Yum over here said. Just, I'll tell you why in a little bit. You go right up one side, and it's good to stay close to the seam. We all right? Oh, gee whiz. Somebody almost had a ooh on this one. And you cut right past that. Go right up the bottom area. All the way to the top. Now, if you've got rivets right here, cut downstream, if you will, of the rivets. You don't want to try to get those rivets out. But if you've got the pocket on there like that, you cut right across the top. And then you go right back down the other side. These are DB scissors, and they're only used for fabric. I mean, guys, if your wife has sewing scissors, they're only to be used on fabric. Yes. She knows where you sleep, guys. And it'll probably be you'll end up sleeping in the doghouse. So I cut the bottom seam off and just cut right back up the other side. It's almost like skinning out a deer, isn't it? So if you have a pocket on here, you can use a razor blade on both sides and cut the top sewing on it. And turn it over and cut the top on it also. I didn't bring a razor blade with me tonight. And then after you cut that off, you can use a seam ripper. Guys, this is a woman's tool. And you go in and you start cutting the stitching until you get it started a little bit. Pull it out. And then you just rip out the seam. Do that on both seams. Then you can use this part of the pocket for 2 pieces of micarta. It's denim, actually. So when you get done, the magic of television, then there's 2 ways to cut this. One is you can take some 1/8" hardboard. You get this in Lowe's and Home Depot or wherever. And it's also, you know, this IKEA cheap furniture, their bookcases, stuff like that, the little doors that slide up, that's what this comes out of. So then you lay out your blue jean material, and if you're going to cut larger pieces for beads of courage boxes, and I'll show you some of those, you cut out a piece that's 5.5, 5.5, or 6 by 6, and you mark the biggest stuff first. And then when you run out down here, you cut another piece, 3 by 5.5 or 6, and then you start marking those pieces. Because that's the size I'll use for ink pens. Okay? The easiest way to do this is use the wife's rotary cutter. This thing right here, this is a razor blade. It's extremely sharp. So I look at wherever the straightest seam is on whichever side, and since I'm going to cut this at 3 inches, I will look at this side over here and try to true it up if I cut wavy lines. So then this rotary cutter just goes on this side, and you just roll up and get it straight. So now if I'm going to make these for pins, I block this down to 3 inches and cut it again. If I'm going to make the beads of courage lids, I'll put this at 5.5 or 6, whatever I'm going to use, and cut it at that. So I'll cut this in at 3 inches. And if it's a little wavy, that's no big deal. Now on this cut right here, if I'm going to do the beads of courage, then I've got this piece right here that I'll cut to 6 inches, 5.5 or 6 inches, whatever. So once I get those pieces cut like that, then I use her fancy little template right here. And since I'm right-handed, I'll turn this around and I'll lay this on here and get it kind of squared up with a line right here, and I'll cut off the end right here, get it square. So now that I'm going to cut these at 5.5 inches, I'll lay the line here and cut it. Lay a line right here and cut it. And right here and cut it. So I'll take, usually one pair of blue jeans is enough for a Beads of Courage box lid and a micarta for pin. What I normally do is I take these and I just put them back to back like that. You can leave them the same way, like this. Now you can use any color of denim, the green or the brown denim. Now I will tell you that down here in the military area, you can make micarta out of BDUs. The Army has a different color, the Air Force has a different color, and I hear the Navy's got a light blue. They've done away with them? So if you can go to the thrift store on post or on base or wherever, you buy the BDUs, but look at it and it says ripstop, don't use it. What happens with that, it embeds itself into the mat. And then you guys, you go buy your wife a brand new cutting mat. I know. No, the smaller one's like $34 and this is like $60 or something like that. So don't use ripstop. Now, I'll pass these around as I explain this. Woo! That's the advantage of micarta. It's like concrete. So these are some different micarta. This is blue jean material. This is blue jean material that was dyed green. This is purple. This is actually Army BDU. I think that's right. This is regular BDU for the jungle type stuff. You can see the different layers in it. And this one here is the Air Force ripstop BDU. And I'm not going to use that stuff ever again. Okay. Question. Battle dress uniform. I'm sorry. I'm a military guy. It's an acronym, battle dress uniform. Now they got some OCP. Where'd Johnny go? OCP is occupational something uniform. OCP. So I'll pass this one around. I'm through cutting, but we'll leave that. Leave it. Leave it. So I'm going to pass some of this stuff around so you can look at what some of this does. This is a bottle stopper. Show. Bottle stopper with denim micarta and a Ruth Niles stainless steel bottle stopper. Now I've got these counted, so I expect them all to come home. Now I will tell you that the micarta, you can turn slimline pens with it, but you have to be really careful because if you're not, it can explode. Now I found out the trick on that is when you drill it to take thin CA glue and put when you drill it. After you drill it, you put thin CA glue in there, then re-drill it. Then use Gorilla Glue and glue the tube in. That prevents it from splitting out. And I use Gorilla Glue. I probably could put this one back together, but I thought I'd keep it as an example of what not to do. Okay? And these pins right here are the pins out of the BDU material. And this is a slim line material. Now with the cactus juice, you can leave the cactus juice plain, or you can put dye in it, blue, green, purple, whatever, and make a darker micarta type pen. If you leave it plain, you'll get a lighter colored pen. Pass those around. Now I'm showing you what the micarta looks like when it comes out of the oven. This is a BDU block, and you see I marked it where the Beads of Courage box lid's going to be. And I'll pass this around now that it's empty so you can look at a Beads of Courage box. So what I do is on the Beads of Courage lid, I cut out the corners, and I'm frugal, and that's spelled cheap. So I don't want to waste these. So what I do is I like yogurt. So I take these little yogurt tubs and I'll mix up a little epoxy on the previous one, pour a little epoxy in here because these kind of dish round. And then I'll take the squares and put them in and then pour epoxy, and that is bar top epoxy. It's not the Alumilite over there. Okay. Oh, we undid something.
Johnny, is that the one that they call a gel?
The what?
Gel epoxy?
No, this is the box over there. This is bar top epoxy. And you get it in this box here. It's Pour-On in Virotech. Ace Hardware has this. Now here's a secret. Good Black Friday after Thanksgiving, they have one item 50% off. The bigger box is $26. I sweet talked the lady and I was able to get 2 boxes because it was just right at $50. I got 2 boxes for $50. Otherwise it's $13 for the big box sale. Or you can get 15% off everything inside. The reason I use this is when I pour it around the 4 pieces of denim, then it sets up, and what I will do is I'll hold this in a chuck, take the plastic off of it, turn it round, and then wherever the points are from the 4 pieces of denim, then I'll turn it round and then slice it probably 3 times, and I make spin tops like this that goes into Beads of Courage boxes for kids. So I'm not wasting. Yes, I'm spending a little extra money for the bar top, but you see you can dye these at different colors and make them different sizes, stuff like that. So I don't waste the corners of the Alumilite, micarta, and also the Alumilite that I'm using. So that's the way I do that. Now, how many layers? Is that what your question? Yeah. Okay, if you're going to make a Beads of Courage lid, you need 50 layers of denim. 50 layers. If you're going to turn the slimline pens, this is 25 layers of denim. And if you're going to do, right over there, those. If you're going to do the thicker, which I recommend, do the thicker pens, we keep them. These are 35 to 40 layers. Now, the military battle dress uniform, the BDU, is a lot thicker than denim. So you can have to experiment a little bit. If you use 30 layers and find out it's too thin, next time put 40 layers. If you're going to do the Beads of Courage lids, 50, 60 layers. I mean, it's like concrete. It sets up really hard, so, but it turns really nice. So I'll pass that around. Question?
What are you cutting it with?
Regular tools. Bandsaw. Now, I will show you, yeah, because I use his studio. When you get them out of the mold, and I'll talk about the mold here in a little bit, you'll see that the different layers are offset a little bit. I just mark it, cut it with a bandsaw to square it up, kind of like this one right here. Now this one's got corduroy, It's not really good material. Corduroy does not absorb the cactus juice very well. Yes, you can make pins with this and it looks like quite striking, but it just don't set up good. This is actually denim without the dye in it. And I'll pass this around and you can see the different layers in it. Any question? Yes. Those are the corners of the beads of courage top that I put in to make this. So I don't waste those corners. Yeah, you can throw them away, but you're wasting the cactus juice. And it's nice to give them to kids because when you spin these things, they spin pretty. They look pretty. Now, we'll tell you that when you turn the pin, I keep the fluff, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then I keep it. So I'll mix up some of that bar top epoxy and mix in with the fluff and make spin tops. Now the thing is, it's light blue, but once I sand it and put the finish on it, it turns really dark. I can't explain why. It just does. So I'll pass that around. And this is how, I want to go back on the Beads of Courage lids and tell you how I do that. After I get the block like this and mark it, then I'll turn a tenon on the inside so I can hold it with a chuck. Well, and I use my Talon chuck. You could probably use the G3 chucks or any chuck that you've got in your arsenal. And then I'll completely turn the other side and sand it. Now, super glue is going to be your friend because when you sand it, you're still going to have a little bit of fuzz. So I'll put a thin coat of thin CA glue on there and hit it with just a little bit of accelerator. Come back with a hunter tool and just lightly kiss it, so to speak. And then I'll sand it a little bit more, and I'll probably put 2 coats of medium CA glue on, then sand it and finish it down. It comes up like that box back there. Otherwise, you can feel it. And that's okay because you can have a little texture feeling, which is okay. Kids like to feel texture. And they'll say, is that really material? And then after I do that, turn this and finish it, then I'll drill. I use a 1/2-inch tenon on my Beads of Courage knobs. You can use 9/16 like Jim, or you can use 5/8 or whatever the size tenon that your Beads of Courage knob is. But I use 1/2 inch, so I'll drill into the depth that my knob's going to set in there, and then I'll vacuum chuck this because I've got it on my chuck. I'll vacuum chuck it, and then I'll turn the bottom, sand, do the same thing, thin CA glue. I might leave the little divot right there so I can recenter it on my vacuum chuck, put the thin CA glue on there, lightly touch it, and then probably put 2 coats of medium CA glue, put it back on the lathe, and then turn away the tenon. And that will be a little bitty nub right there, and the CA glue will soak into that area, and it finishes up really nice. Any questions on all that? Did I confuse you completely? Okay, so now to make the material, or the molds, if you will. Okay. And these spin tops, they don't, if they go off the floor, it won't hurt at all. It's down there somewhere. Now, this is a Micarta Blue Jean pin that's going to be for your door prize. So I'll pass it around. You can look at it and you can get it in the back. These pins, you can sell them from 40 to 100 plus bucks, easy, just like that, real quick. Oh, I will say on the cutter here, folks, the women know about it, the DB, but it's got a lock on it. You can lock it down like this, but that cutter is exposed. It's not a good idea to leave it like that. Leave it like this, and it'll slice you just really quick. So let me get that out of the way. Now I've got 3 of the BDU pins here on the slim line. I'll pass those around. You can look them at them in the bag. So my drill, impact driver. Yeah, what?
What is making it heavy?
It's the cactus juice and the material. So the cactus juice, I don't know exactly how you calculate how much it absorbs, but it absorbs quite a bit. So the cactus juice itself is rather heavy. I mean, a gallon is what, 8 point some pounds per gallon. So, but it don't take very much. So, oh, I'll pass these around. This is the spin top before it's finished. It's just rough turned. This was a finished one. They have exactly the same color to start with. So the finish and the sanding wax causes it to change color. Don't ask me why. I don't know.
What gave you the idea to try this?
That's a good question. Has anybody watched Forged in Fire? It's a TV show. They make knives. One episode, they had a episode to make a survival knife for the astronauts that went up in space early on, because they thought if they landed on a desert island, like we're going to lose them, they would need a survival knife. And the handle on it was made with micarta. So then I went online and looked up what micarta is, and it's the same thing as this phenolic material. I'll pass this around too. But
You have a painter friend that wears the white painter's pants.
They work too.
yes,
Will work fine.
yeah.
That's where the survivor knife had a white handle. It's like Bruce's. You look for it.
Here it is. So to make what I call a mold, we'll use that in a little bit. You can use wood, and you can get these screws at Home Depot. They're probably Lowe's too. Hello? I would like to do that. So, see the screws? Now, the way I made this is I decided what size screw I was going to use, and then took the shaft diameter minus just a little bit, and I used that size drill bit, laid these out laid them out so there's kind of symmetrical, and then drilled the little hole through both of them. I clamped them with a C-clamp, drilled through, and then after I did that, then I drilled the larger hole, which is almost 5/16. Now, the thing is, I've used plywood, which is over here, and this is beech, but it cracked. And I'm still using it, and it works okay. This is the latest block that came out of it, and you can see where the screws were right there that indented in it, but you'll turn that away. And you can see how the different layers of denim here made the micarta. So I'll pass that around if you want to look at it. The reason I have a piece of 2x4 on the bottom, if you noticed when I run this through, it went beyond the bottom. Now I'm going to talk about the cactus juice in a little bit, and you'll understand why you need that 2x4 on the bottom so the screws don't go through your pan that you're going to use with the cactus juice. So I'll just set this in here, line them up a little bit, and you'll notice here I put screws in the side of this one after it cracked so that it would stay together. Now this is one that I've used and made all of those lids for beads of courage. And these screws like to catch when you're trying to get them out. And see, there's another beads of courage lid. And the corners, I'll do them the same way. And I might use pink or green or some other color to offset the blue. And here you can see the same reason. I've got 2x4s on the bottom, so when the screw goes through, it don't poke a hole in my pan. This is one of those pine door or treads for stairs that you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's. Somebody had a piece in one of our first Saturday's shop crawls. I go, I can use that, because I used the plywood and it actually split. So then I went to that. Now, if you have access to it, the best thing is to use a block of aluminum. And the reason I'll say that is when you use plywood or any kind of wood, you've got to put tin foil between the wood and your micarta. If you don't put the tin foil between the wood and micarta, it's all one solid block. But the tin foil allows you to take this apart. That's magnetic, so it pulls those out of there. Now I'll talk about this form here in a bit. Now here you can see this is right out of this block. You'll get some bleed out of cactus juice. That's going to be normal, because when you clamp this, this used to be about this tall. And when I saturate it with cactus juice and clamped it, then baked it, that's what happens. So I'll pass that around. Now on the block of aluminum, you notice I have a keyhole, if you will, right here. It's the same as in the bottom. I have a hole right here. So it was put together basically the same way. I had these two plates together. I drilled the hole for the 5/16. I think it's a 1/4 inch or something like that. Then after I did that, I drilled these holes through like 3/8 so that they'll all go back together really nice and smooth. So now,
So do you tighten it till it squeezes? I mean,
you'll go around it, round it. Now, obviously, I'm not going to use the cactus juice. I'm going to talk about it quite a bit, because you need to have somewhere you can wash it out with soap and water. And the thing is, we'll simulate. Okay, move this out of the way, and this. Any questions up to this point? Hmm?
Which mold do you use?
This, not yet. So, this is going to be a block, my next, to make more bottle stoppers. Because you saw the little bottle stopper that went around, I didn't have enough material in it. So this is 75 individual layers of denim.
One whole thing, okay?
That's at least one blue jean. One blue jean. So, let's see, where's 45?
Jimmy, what kind of paint, dye?
It's a cactus juice dye. Is that what your question was? What kind of dye?
Yeah.
Okay. So you get the cactus juice, and
It's clear.
it's clear. But on this, I wanted my pins to be a little darker so they look more like blue jeans. You saw the lighter colored? That was just normal cactus juice. It's about, if you buy 4 gallons, it's like $65 a gallon. It lasts a long, long time, because all you're doing is taking 2 layers of fabric, and I pour the cactus juice in this little tub, and I set it right beside. And one of the things that I do is I put a piece of plastic down. I got a piece of plywood there on top of somebody's lathe. So I put a piece of plastic down on top of the board, so if I happen to spill any cactus juice, it don't get on his latheways, because it will rust the latheways. So then I get these from Harbor Freight and use them, simulation that this is full of cactus juice. And some of you might have to get little larger ones then. medium. So I pour this in the bucket, and I take 2 pieces, and I dip them in, turn around, dip them in, and I try to get them to where they're square as much as possible, and then lay them next to this right here. This, if you can see it, is 16 penny nails, and I ground off flat on one side of the head. Now the first ones I didn't have this, and it's kind of hard to stack the stuff up. But with that on there, like I say, you can do 1 piece at a time. I usually do 2, and then you do the next 2. Now I got 3, don't matter. Dip them in there and then put it on. I didn't do that. Dip it in here, put it on. I'm going to get down here a little bit. Now when you're cutting your denim, if you have a piece that's 3 inches but it's not quite long enough, don't throw it away. Set it over on the end of your cutting board. Then you can take the other little piece and make a full piece, like that. Frugal.
He's cheap.
Cheap. I mean, I've had the blue jeans gave to me, so why waste them, if you will? So then I'll take and finish this up with how many layers I'm going to do. Like I say, this is all going to be put together for a bottle stopper blank. Once I get all this stacked up, then I take my aluminum foil if I'm using wood. If I'm not using wood, and I need the wooden one back, the smaller one. So then I have a funnel, and anything extra I pour back into the jar.
Would you say you had an inch of cactus juice in there or more?
On that, in the bucket, I probably have an inch and a half to 2 inches. Now, obviously, it depends on how tall, if you're making the beads of courage blocks, or if you're making pin turning block. The reason I just chose the 3 by 6 inches, most of your pin kits are less than 3 inches. But if you saw where the outside of that was, I can trim this to the size of the pin that I'm going to make. So then, after I do that, normally I'll take this, and this has got cactus juice in it, so I'll move that up, and I'll take my block and set it down in here, and then I'll put tin foil on the bottom, take my block off as careful as I can, and put it on here, and wrap it up with tin foil. Because if you don't use the aluminum foil, if you don't use something like that, it will all adhere as one solid block. I don't know if I brought the longer screws. So I have longer screws. So let's take some of this back off. I have another set of longer screws that I will be using for this block right here.
Yeah, you get these at Home Depot and
Lowe's,
different lengths.
yeah.
Are you using those screws because of the head?
Yes.
Yeah.
The head it's a larger head. If you used a washer, you got to fuss with those washers. This way I don't have to fuss with washers at all. I just put these in there and then go around tighten it. Now I will tell you that the dry blue jean material right now, it's not micarta until it's cured. Because it's dry like this, it's not going to compress. But once you put the cactus juice in there, it'll compress amazingly. When you start doing this, you say, I got a block this big, it's going to be plenty. But when you do it, it's going to come down half, maybe 2/3 amount because of it's pushing the air out, and the cactus juice is allowing the fabric to compress, if you will. So then after I put all these screws in, I usually do this more myself, and then sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. And then I'll just run the screws down Don't matter if it's the 6x6 or the 3x6 blocks. It's same procedure on that part. So this is wet and got blue on it, or any color that you want. Now, let me talk about baking this stuff. The cactus juice is activated basically at 85 degrees. That's what starts the process. The cactus juice is a two-part polymer. It's got the gallon jar of juice, and then you get a little bottle of the accelerator, if you will, to pour in. Make sure that if that stuff sets up after a year, it's dry. Pour some cactus juice in there and shake it up. Get every drop of this accelerator into the jar. And then after you do that, 85 Fahrenheit. I'm not into Celsius stuff. Now, a couple things you don't need. This is called an oven tamer. T-A-M-M-E-R. Tamer? T-A-M-E-R. Tamer. T-A-M-E-R. This is from Curtis Seaback. He lives up just south of San Marcos. Not too far from here, just a little work drive. The thing is, on a toaster oven, you can go to yard sales, flea markets, or if you buy one, you can get them for about 65, 80 bucks at Target, Lowe's, different places. And this is a, what is this one anyway? Hamilton Beach, I think. I don't know. The trouble is with a toaster oven, if I set this to 85, it might go 85 down 65, 85 down to 65 or 55. Because the regular oven, even though whatever you have it set at, it's going to oscillate, get hot, get cold, get hot, get cold. With the oven tamer, it only goes maybe a half to 1 degree. So when you set this, and the recommended is to set it at 195. You can set it at 200. So you turn this on to bake, stay on, and set this no higher than 300. And, well, back up. If you don't have the oven tamer, you set this at 200, and then because of the toaster oven, it's going to loop up and down. You're going to go above 200, back down to maybe 175 or something like that, and back up, back down, back up, back down. With the oven tamer, you set all this up, and then you set this at 195 to 200, and it stays basically level. Curtis makes these, but he makes no money off them, he says. Yeah, right. But it comes with a instruction sheet of how to program it. And it works really well. It's all programmable. So I set this at 195, and the toaster oven, like I say, I set this down at 300, bake, stay on. This controls the temperature beautifully. Now, if you're going to dry wood, which if you're getting into the cactus juice and stabilizing punky wood, you can change this to above 212, which is a boiling point of water. You got to go above 212 if you're going to dry wood. You normally go about 220, 225, no more than about 230. When you set that, then it stays at that temperature, 225 to 230, and you leave it in there for a couple hours, and it bakes the water out of your wood, especially punky wood. You take that out and put it in one of the Ziploc bags. It's a freezer type Ziploc bag, and let it cool down before you put it in your cactus juice. Because if you take that wood out of the oven with mitts on and put it right in your cactus juice, guess what? It's going to start activating the cactus juice. One of the other things, if you are using a vacuum system to stabilize wood, you want to have that vacuum pump about 3 to 4 feet away from your cactus juice. Because the vacuum pump runs continuously, it puts out temperature, and it can actually start activating your cactus juice. And there's been people on the wood forum that says, hey, I've got this solid block in my brand new chamber from Curtis Seaback. What happened? Well, when they sent him a picture, the chamber's sitting right here, and then the pump is sitting right there. Well, duh. And there's free radicals in cactus juice. You should not use it in glass, because there's free radicals actually in glass that can actually start it to activate. Not always, but if it starts activating, it's going to set up no matter. And here in Texas, we got hot temperature in the summer. You need to keep your cactus juice down low or take it in the house where it's not exposed to real high temperature if your studio is not air conditioned. Now, this has a temperature probe on it that goes onto your oven, and there's a procedure in here. Every oven is different. Even though you buy 3 Hamilton Beach ovens, they're all going to be just a little bit different the way they program the PID inside. So there's a procedure in here to calibrate the oven timer to the oven that you're using. It's not that complicated. It's really not. It sounds like it's really deep. I mean, if he can do it, anybody can do it. Trust me. Yes. The oven plugs right into here, and I didn't plug it in on purpose because I didn't want it to kick on. Let's see, I got to turn around. And I'll turn this around in a little bit. So you see, I have it set at 195 right now. That's the temperature I use to cure the cactus juice in my Micarta or anything I'm using. Question?
You said the cactus juice activates at 85 or 185?
85. Above 85, it can start activating. Above 85. It may not until it gets a little higher, but some people have had it actually start activating at 85. So that could be the problem. If you don't have an air-conditioned garage, you may need to keep the cactus juice in a bucket of water to keep it cool until you actually get ready to start it. So I'm going to turn this back off because I don't want to get too hot. So that's the procedure for making any of the micarta. Like I said, don't use ripstop. If it says cotton ripstop from military guys, battle dress uniforms, don't go there. But you can if you use this procedure right here. Lay it out with a Sharpie. Cut it with a pair of scissors. Don't use DB's cutting mat. I bought her a new mat, the small one. This is her big one. I bought her a new one because I didn't know it was going to do that. Lesson learned. Okay, any questions on the get to the point that you've got the micarta?
How long do you cook it?
I normally cook it for about an hour. It don't hurt to go longer than that because inside of the block like this, you've got to get it, once it starts activating, it'll set up all the way through it. But I want to make sure that it sets all the way through. And there's possibility on that one piece I passed around, I didn't bake it long enough. Question?
Yeah, do you start with the oven cold or oven hot?
I usually turn the oven on when I'm starting to soak the stuff, so the oven is at that temperature. Now, one of the things that you have to be careful with, because the oven is hot, when you take this thing like this and slide it in here, don't touch the element on top. I did one time. It blistered me good. And I go, what?
So you don't need to have Curtis's chamber to do this?
Have what?
This is different. Little tanks that
No, that is stabilizing. I hit some of that. Pardon me, I hit on some of that. That is stabilizing punky wood. You do not need the chamber. I'm sure that you could put this in the chamber and pull a vacuum on it to pull all excess air out of it. I have not seen the need for that myself. If you did that, it might come around like that handle a little bit harder. Okay?
Whenever you wrap that, you wrap it up and seal it.
Mm-hmm.
Before you squeeze it.
Yeah.
Do you want the excess juice in there, or
A lot of times I'll leave one end open. I'll clamp all of these right here, leave these 2 screws out, and I'll dump the extra cactus juice into the pan. And the reason that, I don't know if you can see somewhere on this pan, before I put the blocks on the bottom, one of the screws went through and it almost put a hole in the pan. So also, in here that, and real often when you put the screws in, it'll nick the tin foil enough to let it out. Yeah, and I get these at, DV gets these at Home Depot, or excuse me, at HEB, and I put them in there to catch any, because some of that's gonna bleed out. That's just normal, when you do that. Any questions on this part?
How long is that juice good for?
The actual cactus juice is good for like 2 years unless you have it in a hot environment.
What if you haven't activated?
If you haven't activated, it's good for about 3 or 4 years. And the way that you can find out if it's good, you can take a little bit and pour in a shot glass. I don't know what a shot glass is. Pour a little bit in a shot glass and put it in the oven and bake it. Or you could probably use a little tin foil or a little tunic tin or something like that. And if it sets up, it's still good. If it don't set up, if it's like Jello or something like that, then it's not any good. I've heard that you... Yes. I've heard that you can buy extra activator from Curtis if the jar has not been open, it's more than 2 or 3 years old. I've never had that problem because I don't let it last that long. Any other questions?
Does the foil stick to your
No.
baked?
No. You can just peel it right off. It just comes off really easy.
Didn't you say if you used aluminum, which
Yeah, if you use the aluminum plates, you do not need to use foil because it will not stick. But wherever that aluminum plate is, if you look at the board on the bottom, some of that will bleed off and you'll have cactus juice around the bottom, and I just scrape it off with a chisel or sand it or something like that. And that's what this block is here, so I don't poke holes in my pan.
What are the screws for in the side? Oh, it's split.
It's split. This one's split, so I put screws in here to salvage it for a while. And since that one's split, I went ahead and put screws in the top, so hopefully it won't split.
He's cheap.
Yeah.
He'll buy a new piece of wood.
No, I'll take if I get another piece of wood, I'll take these screws out and use them in his stuff. All right. And any more questions on this part?
When you take the blank out of after it's finished, it's cured.
Yes,
take
cured.
the foil off. How do you make that first cut with the band? So I just hand cut.
I lay a ruler down and take a Sharpie and mark it. And normally what I'll do is I'll cut the first side close as I can to the bandsaw, and then I'll put the square on this side, mark it, and then I'll turn it, and once these two are cut, then I'll cut here. And you can see this one's not perfectly. I might have just free-handed that and not used the Sharpie and the ruler on it. But there again, what I'm going to do is keep these and put them in a tub and make a spin top out of them. Okay. Next item, I'm going to talk about turning this miserable stuff. Not miserable stuff. Okay. How many turns pins in here? Oh, maybe I should. How many do not turn pins? Okay. This is a fun project. Yes, it's a little more that you got to get involved with and stuff like that. But they sell pretty good. So the rest of it is, somebody had a question? The rest of it's basically pin turning. I hold this in a chuck and drill a hole in it. And then I put thin CA glue in and let it set, just turn it a little bit. And what I normally have is a little round tool. It's just a piece of rod like this. And I put this in here, and then I'll put the super glue, the thin CA glue, on all sides. Let it saturate a little bit, and then I hit it with accelerator. That just saturates the fabric a little better, especially on the inside. And once I glue the tube in, then I'll put thin CA glue. Are we good? Yeah. Thin CA glue on both ends, so when I use the barrel trimmer, and that kit comes with this bushing, and I put it in there, and it just trims up the end of it. Normally like you would do wood. Super glue is going to be your friend on these things, though. And then this is the drill bit that comes with the kit, and I have it marked somewhere on here, or at least I did, of how far to drill through. Okay? And
you get your CA glue smoking, the white smoke.
no, the thin CA glue.
Probably it's the company
Yeah, I used,
That smoke burned the heck out of me.
I have no problem with it.
Put mask on.
Yeah. Some people are very sensitive to the fumes from CA glue, and it'll burn your eyes. So I use it in my studio, my AKA garage, and I have not had the problem, but some people
But
can't.
it doesn't smoke?
Not for me. It hasn't. I might tomorrow, now that you mentioned it.
What brand?
I'm using Star Bond, CPH Star Bond. This
Same as we get it.
It's the same one.
same stuff. It don't smoke. Now, what wood are you using?
Oh,
See, I'm using Micarta. Now, I have had it smoke on
it does on wood.
different woods.
Filling a crack, the sawdust. I don't even have to use the activator.
It's
It all of a sudden goes in and it starts.
It's because the wood has moisture in it.
Yeah, if the wood has moisture in it, it activates it like crazy. Oh, I guess that's locked. So, now, oh, I wanted. I normally crank this out for a reason. Remember Johnny's Frugal? Something like that. And this blocks backwards from what I'm used to. Okay. Now, I want to save, I'm going to call it fluff. Now, if you don't want to save what I call the fluff, you can use the vacuum. I'm coming undone at the seams. Okay. Can you still hear me okay? Now, it's a good idea to use a dust mask. Something small like this, captured between centers. I normally don't wear a face shield, but if you're using anything bigger than this, please use a face shield. So, I might try not to use this, but I guess you can still hear me? Okay. So I use the number 1 hunter tool. This might be too noisy. Let's see if that works. Otherwise, it sounds like I'm a rhinoceros. This is an RZ mask. Lowe's had them at one time. Vincent Welch also has, is it the similar one?
It's kind of similar, yeah. I just contacted him. He got some new mask in. I told him to send me 5 to try. I don't know what the price of them are. I've only got one set of lungs.
One of the things I did not talk about, and most of you that does pin turning, if you don't, you need to get a deburring tool. When you true up the ends, because this is brass, it can roll inside. When you get ready to assemble your pins, that brass that's rolled inside can really mess up your kit. This is a deburring tool that you put in here, and it just takes that burr off on both ends. Penn State, I believe that is. Okay. Now, one of the things that AAW recommends not to do is not to wear a glove. Now, if you're doing bowls and platters and things like that, the wood that's coming off on your bowl gouge burns. So I wear a glove, but I cut the fingers out. So that here you can see I do Christmas ornaments and the delicate icicle and finial. I'm holding my hand underneath there. I've replaced this piece 4 or 5 times. But that's on a real delicate icicle. It's not a good idea, but if you do wear a glove, be extremely cautious. New folks, be really careful. Yeah, I take the fingers and I keep the fingers where I cut them off. I'm cheap. Then I cut them out and I glue that on. And actually, when I cut the fingers off, I turn the gloves inside out to start with. And where the threads is, I've got a little sewing awl that I'll sew each thread back together, just a couple stitches, so when I turn it back out, they don't unravel. But I keep the fingertips for that reason. You can use let's see if I got it. You can use probably any tool.
Area to stabilize like long stems and all that?
The what?
Is that why you're doing that?
The what? I'm sorry.
Okay, you said you put that on there for finials that are thin,
Yeah.
so you let the finials sit on your hand?
I usually normally use my fingers, but the glove is running next to it, and after a while it will wear that through. So I didn't do that one yet. Thin CA,
Oh, is it here?
is that the thin?
I'm not sure. Is it thin?
No, that's medium, that's thin. Now you have to be careful and not glue your bushings in. Hello? I don't know what that was. And I normally do all four sides on that and just wait for a moment or two. Is this variable speed? No? Okay. So are we seeing, okay? Yes, I think we need to change the belt because I want more power.
Pull that black thing here.
And here, one of the fun things to go into a different club is trying to figure out all the ins and outs. I'm going to go maybe,
One more, no guts, no glory.
okay.
Brotherly glove, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not turning it.
It's just a pin.
The line of fire.
Jimmy moves out of the way.
In my studio, I have my one-way set on the high speed, and every time I go to use it, it's on the low speed.
That's because I'm turning big stuff, he's turning little stuff. So now, have you noticed I'll start on the end. You don't want to get really hoggish on this. Just take your time. Hoggish. And here you can see the fabric hitting my hand. It's not hurting, but if it was wood, it could burn a little bit. That's a 100 #1 carbide. That's one that's in your door prize. Matter of fact, you hand that to me, I'll use it without a handle. Or I could use that piece of phenolic as a handle. That's because I'm not getting very aggressive with this. Is this smelling too much? I can turn the vacuum on and suck it up. Suck it up. Now I'm using this tool, I'd say about a 30 to 40 degree angle. I'm not doing it flat. So it's peeling the material away. Now after I get it round or close to it, you'll see that fabric starting to pull a little bit. That's where I take the thin CA and put a little bit more thin on it. Especially where the fabric is pulling a little bit. Like I say, thin and medium CA glue for doing these will be your friend. Because it only soaks in, yeah, that far.
A little bit.
Yeah, I don't know how far it soaks in. But then I'll accelerate this. Oh, it's dry. Oh, yeah, it's dry. Oh, it wasn't dry. Can you smell it? Woo! That's why I have my vacuum going. No, I'll turn it on. Now, through the modern technology that we have here tonight, if I get it. There we go. I'm not used to that. Mine locks this way. Yeah, I don't know. It don't seem to. I mean, it goes all the way down there. Yeah, this one. Yep, wrong bushing. There's so many different mandrels that's on the market. Get what you like. Now, once I get it down to this point,
What he means is if you buy stuff from Penn State,
stay with Penn State.
Crass Supply, because they're a little bit different.
This is a Doug Thompson skew. I've used it actually to turn these also, but I find a Hunter carbide tool works better. So once I get it down to that point, I use these micro mesh. Actually, I use, where's the Abernet? I use Abernet to sand this down to start with. And I go with 80 grit. I think that's what it is. 80, 120, 240, 320, 400. Once I sand this with the micro mesh, the Abernet, then I'll put 2 coats of CA glue on. Hey, that one's a wild one. Put 2 coats of CA glue and come back and sand it again. And then I'll use the micro mesh pads and sanding wax. How many of you use sanding wax? You know what it's made out of? If you do a Google on sanding wax, your question? Oh. If you do a Google on sanding wax, Captain Eddie Castile from Louisiana has a recipe. It's actually beeswax and mineral oil. 30, 40% each one or something. There's a formula on it. The more mineral oil you put in, the more liquid it'll be. So I use that on the micro mesh pads and polish this up to 1200 grit, 12,000 grit. And I use that same sanding on the spin tops, the Beads of Courage lids, and I on the spin tops for the kids and the tops. And I actually use it now on a lot of wood items because it keeps the dust down. So once I get this done, it's a matter of putting the pin together per the instructions. Now, like I said earlier, you can make these in slimline, but I find there's hardly any material left at all. And it's a good idea to have a vacuum going to pull away the fumes from the CA glue, because that was pretty strong. And because I've got the vacuum going, I didn't realize that at home how much it would be. So then after you get this finished, now put it together. I also probably use, what else is back there? I use the Triple E Ultra Shine after I go through this, and then I put Renaissance wax on top of it. It just helps keep fingerprints down. Most pin turners know all about this kind of stuff.
We do?
Yeah. One of the things I told you about the keeping the fluff. I have these military vitamins. No, not vitamins. Anyway, it's pill bottles. So whatever it is, I'll put this stuff in a Dixie cup, and then I'll pour half of equal 50-50 of the bar top epoxy and mix it up really good, and then put it in here and stir it up until it's kind of like a thick paste. And then I'll pour it into a bottle like this, because this is the perfect size for making spin tops. And once this sets up, then I can put this between centers with my chucks. I put a chuck on headstock and tailstock, slice it, drill it, put a dowel in there, and then make the spin tops out of it. So I don't waste any of the fluff. Well, you can see I'm going to waste some of it, but it's something you can do. You don't have to save this at all, but it's just something different that I do. Question? Yes, on this right here, I usually use two, after I get it down with the Abernet, I'll put 2 coats of medium CA glue on, and just lightly, if there's bubbles or blisters in it, I'll use the hunter tool, lightly turn it, and then I'll sand it with the Abernet, and then back with the micro mesh, and you can feel how perfectly smooth it is. If you don't want to go that far, it leaves a little texture on it, so if it feels like my blue jeans. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It just depends on how much you want to work on this. It's a fun project, and it's not that expensive because you can get the toaster oven. You can use the toaster oven without the tammer, but the tammer keeps it at a straight line. It keeps it at a constant temperature. Otherwise, you can put a thermometer in there and you can see where it is. If you have a fluke meter with a digital readout for a temp probe, you can really see it fluctuating. And when you put the tammer on there, it's just a straight line. They're around $160.
I put a digital meter in this oven, and we set it at 200. It would shoot up to 255, and then it dropped down to like 90.
Yeah, it's just big swings. So the reason you can use the toaster oven with cactus juice, because it's in that line. Once it gets above 85, the cactus juice starts setting up. Once it goes to 255 and just drop down, but you'll get more bleed out of the cactus juice when it goes those big swings. You'll still get bleed out with it at 195 like I've got it set, but not near as much. And you're going to have some. That's just the nature of the beast. Okay?
So the hotter it is, the more bleed out?
Yes, yeah. If you keep it a toaster oven like that and don't have the tammer on it, you'll get more bleed out. And that might be some of the first pins I was doing before I got the tammer. It seemed like the material wasn't as solid as after I started using that.
Also, with the blue jean material, we're not baking it to make sure it's perfectly dry.
Mhm.
So
if you got some grungy old blue jeans and you have DB wash them, run an iron over them, let them set for a few days before you can cut them, but once you cut them and start stacking them, you're not letting the air pull that out. But inside house moisture is probably 40 to 50% in the winter. So you got that. And like Curtis says, on wood, you want it to have it almost at 0 moisture content, which makes the cactus juice work more. On wood, what you're doing in cactus juice and with a vacuum, you're pulling the air out of the cells of the wood, and you need to pull it until all the little bitty bubbles basically stop. It might be several hours to 12 hours, depends on the wood. Then you release the vacuum before you turn off the pump, because if you turn off the pump first, it can suck the cactus juice back in the pump, and that's not good. And then you let the wood set in cactus juice, usually twice to 3 times the length that you actually have pulled vacuum. Now, you can take it and put it in another jar or something like that, or another jug, cut off the top, but be careful what you put it in. Don't put it in milk jugs, because milk jugs will split. It's the wrong type of material. So any other questions on the cactus juice or any of this? I hope somebody enjoys it and you can take it home. I know there's quite a bit to absorb, but it's a good fun project. And the kids love the spin tops, because when you spin them, it's got the different colors and stuff in there. Now, I have another guy that makes knife scales. If you ever watched A Forge and Fire, on each side of a hunting knife is called a scale. Well, he makes scales, and he uses wood and other stuff, and he pours extra because when you want to save this wood, you don't want to not have enough cactus juice. So extra cactus juice, no, cactus juice. No, I'm sorry. Aluminite. So the aluminite, I'm sorry. So the aluminite, he pours the extra aluminite in a Dixie cup and is setting on an angle, and then he gives that to me, and I slice it and make spin tops for the kids out of the aluminite also. But the cactus juice stabilizes the denim, and I use the corners of that, and then I use the bar top epoxy for the spin tops. So
So there's nothing wasted.
I try not. I mean, I could actually catch the extra stuff off of this and reuse it. I mean, how far do you go? The jeans, I mean, people have at church now know that I do this for kids, and they'll bring me a pair or two of blue jeans, and I'll cut them up and I'll make stuff out of them and make spin tops for the kids or beads of curry tops. I've got all of those. A reason I do not put a handle in those, because when I get ready to do the top of a beads of curry box with a PVC like I demonstrated before, the top I put the lid on it and put the tailstock up there, and I mark around the lid either the micarta or wood or whatever, and then I'll mortise that, if you will, with the tools, and then inset the lid so I know that the lid's fitting in there. And of course I made the special wooden jaws to hold that and turn the rest of the top out for the beads of curry boxes. Those are fabulous back there. I'm not a painter, an artist. I mean, those are just fabulous. Whoever made them, that's great. Good job. And kids love them. I use the PVC with what I call child-friendly fabric. It's just fabric that's got cute little things on it, and the kids love them, but I know they're going to love those. For a while, Beads of Courage organization run out of the beads. Are you cutting the beads in half or just putting the whole bead in? Yeah, it's a lot easier because the diamond cutter costs 26 bucks, and I can cut usually 50 beads before it burns it up. I mean, it wears it out. So I'm just about ready to say forget cutting them in half and use the whole bead like you do. It's a lot easier. Yeah.
But that's not cheap. You got two of them out of it, right?
Well, yeah, I get two beads. They're 20 for $25. So I cut them half. I'm getting 50 beads because I'm only putting half a bead in. But the cutter is $26. The mandrel, which you can use over and over and over, is like $13. So, you know. Yeah.
Squeezing down your material.
Hmm.
How do you judge when to stop?
Well, usually with the impact driver like that, you'll know when it's pretty good. And then because all the screws, you'll just keep going around until it stops. The aluminum plates work so much better than the wood because, but still you don't want to go all the way down on one end and not the other. You want to take it down in a series, and it just keeps squishing that down, and it works out really well. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Any other questions? Oh, what time are we doing? Are we good?
It's 8:15. Oh, you got another 10 minutes?
Oh, and what do we want to talk about? Oh, we got some money out on our jeans back here. So, well, thank you. Bob?